Okay. Hello, hi, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our next instalment of Wellbeing for the Workplace. And today we are talking about period dignity and menopause. So just to introduce ourselves on screen here. Hello. So so my name is Laura, and I'm part of the Swindon Wiltshire Local Enterprise Partnership and the Growth Hub. And I basically concentrate on all things that are skills related, and it's my colleague Letitia.
Hello, I'm Letitia and I am a business navigator, so I help businesses whether they're looking to start up, scale up or so forth within that, or any changes that they need to make within their business with regards to marketing or sales or finances as well. We're here to support that as well.
Okay, so and the reason for the Wellbeing in the Workplace series of events is because working with our partners at Wiltshire Council and Swindon Borough Council, we've recognised that there are certain gaps in support that are offered for our business community. So we have picked up topics that we are hearing on the ground when we're talking to businesses that are very important to them, and we are finding some brilliant speakers that can give a bit more information around the subject, and also some signposting. How can you do things better in your workplace, and how can you support your employees better, basically? So yeah, I think period dignity and menopause is huge topic. We're hearing that from businesses, yes, in our own office.
Exactly, we were talking about it yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely something that's affecting everyone. Yeah. And our speakers today are particularly brilliant. We have Grace and Green here, or we have Richard and Meg, not Grace and Green. We have Richard and Meg, who are here representing Grace and Green, which are an ethical, sustainable, organic company that create period products, but also are really about getting a message out about how to do that sustainably, and to make to make period dignity more of a topic, and also better for women that are using them, and also for men to support them in their workplaces.
Most definitely.
So yeah, that would be really brilliant to hear from Grace and Green. And actually, we're really pleased to have them. I actually begged them to come along because I saw them speak at our business event that we had before. So we're really pleased to share them with you. And then we've also got Helen Nicol, who Helen Nicol is a colleague of ours from Wiltshire Council, and she's a public health practitioner, and she's going to be talking to us about menopause. I already had a flick through her presentation, and I'm super excited to hear it. So we're looking forward to that as well. And so on that note,
yes,
if we can ask Helen to come on screen and introduce herself to everybody and say hello.
Hello, and thank you, Letitia and Laura, for that amazing introduction. So I hope I'm going to live up to your expectations. So hi, Helen Nicol from Wiltshire Council. I'm a public health practitioner. I'm just going to put it out there straight away. I'm not a clinician, and you don't need to be to support people with menopause. But my background is I run a menopause cafe at Wiltshire Council, which is really well attended. I have personal experience of menopause myself, and as a manager of I have to say quite a few years now, I've managed this people experiencing menopause within my group of and within my team. So if we want to get started, we will pop up our presentation. This is the hairy bit. There we go. Take a moment. Super. There we go. So we go on to my first slide. Maybe a bit of a delay. So really what I'm here to talk about today is how we can gain an awareness of supporting both ourselves and others at work that are transitioning menopause. Now, this subject impacts on all of us. It may be that we're experiencing and transitioning menopause ourselves. It could be that we have a sister, a colleague, an auntie, a friend who's actually transitioning menopause. So we may be a son, a husband, a work colleague. This is actually going to have an impact on all of us. And also what is really important to remember is that women over 50 are the fastest part of our workforce, the fastest growing area of our workforce. So actually supporting them to perform at that absolute optimum can be of great benefit to business. Often women around that age are at the pinnacle of their career. They have a wealth of experience and they can be really excellent role models and supporters for people that are coming into the workforce and also those that are starting to leave the workforce as well. So what I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to do a little bit around the terminology, you know, what is menopause, some of those legal considerations, because there are some responsibilities that we all have, some of the symptoms and impacts that menopause transition can have on a person and can have on your business. Some practical tips, so those are for people both experiencing menopause, but also then looking at the adjustments that maybe we can make in the workplace that can be just really, really small, that can really enable a person to feel supported and really be able to bring their whole selves to work and perform at that optimum level. And also there's some good stuff, because we can quite often sort of think of all of the negatives and it can be really stigmatizing, but actually this can be a really good part of somebody's life, both at home and in their workplace. And also I'm going to provide you with a few signposts to support. So that's support for both you as a business, but also for individuals that are seeking some additional support. And I'm going to go a bit left field here, and you're going to think, why is there a picture of a killer whale? And what's his granny hypothesis? Well, you may be really surprised to know that very few mammals actually transition menopause. Actually, there are really, really few, and not primates. So primates can continue to reproduce really almost up until their death. But killer whales, short-finned pilot whales, actually have a menopause with a significant amount of lifespan afterwards. And the reason I'm telling you this is because these killer whales, once they're past their childbearing age, they actually have a really important purpose within their pod. They act as babysitters, they act as role models, they act as midwives. And what they actually do, really, really importantly, that in times of, if you like, famine, so when it's difficult for the pod to actually find food, their experience will actually enable them to lead the pod to hunting grounds. So they have a real purpose within that pod. And I hope that has some resonance with us all. So when we think of menopause and what goes on afterwards, we still have a really great purpose. There's still lots that we can bring to the table in life. So I love the granny hypothesis. And actually, just to give you a bit of background, the picture there is of the killer whale nicknamed Granny. She's 99, can you believe it? And they had done a really huge amount of research on her. So hence I'm able to give you that information. So just moving on, just some of the key terms, because really we probably need to know what we're talking about. So medically, menopause starts when a person has stopped having periods for 12 months. It's not just those that identify as women who will experience this, so it can be some transgender people, it can be non-binary, intersex, or people with variations in sex characteristics. What the point really is here is don't make any assumptions, and menopause typically can start from about the age of 45 to 55, usually about 51 being when menopause occurs, but that is not hard and fast. So some people may experience this a lot earlier through all sorts of reasons. It could be for medical reasons, it could be genetics, some much later. Some can experience very severe symptoms and some none at all. There is also the perimenopause, you may have heard of that. So that's the period leading up to menopause. So those hormones are going up and down, the estrogen, the progesterone tending to decrease, but sometimes they can come back again with a vengeance. So that period can really start as early as a person's 30s, typically the 40s. But what is really important here is to look at this as a journey, as a transition. And really for the purposes of this morning, I'm just going to talk about menopause, but that is incorporating both the perimenopause, menopause and post-menopausal period. So just another little reminder, just don't make any assumptions when we're dealing with this. And that's really important when we come on to some of the support and adjustments that you can give to a person, because if you're a manager, we're not here to fix a person's medical conditions or to diagnose them, but we are here to support and signpost them. So just moving ahead, I think it's really important to think of or to be aware of the legal considerations around menopause. I've popped on just a few of the key legals here, really. So the Equality Act, which has those characteristics that are all protected. Menopause isn't one of them. Menopause and menstruation. There was talk of that some time ago, but it didn't quite make it there. But actually, on the whole, it is covered under sex, age and disability, so under those protected characteristics. So disability, something that really goes on for 12 months or more. The Health and Safety at Work Act, and the management of health and safety regulations. So that's ensuring that where reasonably practicable, those adjustments are made and a person is kept safe at work, risk assessing for any potential harms and mitigating against those. There is also a very recent British standard, which I have a link to at the end of this presentation, and I would highly recommend you have a look at. It's really great and full of really practical things that we can do in the workplace to enable a person to transition menopause with the most support, but also so that businesses can still get that really optimal performance from a person. Now, the government has obviously taken this really seriously. They now have a menopause employment champion, Helen Tomlinson. She's out there and really getting boots on the ground and supporting people and businesses around menopause. So do look her up. There's a really great toolkit that is available, and again, I've got the links to that. So it is important to think of these things. There have been some successful employment tribunal cases in recent times. So this isn't why we should be supporting people, but it is a really important consideration. So here are just some statistics to share with you. I don't know if they're surprising or not. I've seen them so many times, they're no longer a surprise to me, but do take a look at those. And as you can see, 1 in 10 women who have worked during their menopause have actually left their job. Up to about 14 million, sorry, excuse me, 14 million days are lost to the economy during the year due to people having to navigate those menopausal symptoms. 1 in 4 people have really serious symptoms, but it is important to remember that not everybody has symptoms. 2/3 of the people working through menopause say they currently have no support from their employers. I think that's quite interesting, because I feel some of that is because maybe we don't know how to start the conversation. Or maybe we're just not aware that a person may be experiencing symptoms. Because of the stigmatization, people often keep these things to themselves and don't share them. So we're going to discuss that a little bit more later. And I think really the fact that 1 in 10 people do end up quitting is really something for us to consider, because as I mentioned earlier, these are often people that are at the pinnacle of their career. They've often been invested in and developed and actually have lots of skills that can really help a business and support other members of staff. So here are just some of the symptoms of menopause. So they're both physical and psychological. So you may have heard of hot flushes or hot flashes. They're not just getting hot, they actually seem to come from within, and you feel on fire. You can end up drenched in sweat. Your sleep can be disturbed. So if you're not sleeping well, that has a massive effect on just about everything else. During the day, you're not going to be as sharp and as quick, because you're going to feel sleep deprived. Headaches, heart palpitations. Psychologically, you may be feeling low mood, depressed. Brain fog, you may have heard of that. I get this a lot, it's, oh, what's that word? What's that word? I can think of it and it comes, 10 minutes later. Losing concentration, so being easily distracted, and then maybe having mood disturbances or mood swings, if you like. Those are just a few. I mean, you can look on the internet, you'll see that there's at least 38, 40 symptoms. They include many other things, joint pain, for example. But they're all things that really can have a very significant impact on a person. Now, also, just to remind you again, these symptoms may not be of menopause, so it's not up to us to diagnose what's going on for a person, but what we can do is support them to reach out to their healthcare professional, because what we don't want to do is to assume it's something, and actually there could be something underlying that is causing some of these symptoms. So how can it actually impact at work? So here's just a few examples. So you may find that a person loses their confidence and gets that sort of feeling of imposter syndrome. Now we all get that at times, I know, but it can be really exacerbated. And we're talking about people that are often really on the top of their game, but suddenly losing confidence. And this can reduce their performance overall. You may just notice that somebody is a bit different. Maybe they're withdrawing, but it can go the other way. They can be much more lively than they were before. And they may be exhibiting, stress or depression, but they may not be. So, we can't make any of those assumptions. But what you may notice as an employer is that maybe there's more time off work. You can look at your sickness absence data, and maybe you can start to see some patterns there. So maybe for headaches, but it may be that people are not comfortable to say why they're actually off. And again, that's down to the stigma. And maybe because we still don't discuss this as openly as we can, although it's had so much publicity in recent years with Davina McCall, Mariana Fostrop. We sort of think it's out there, but sometimes it still isn't, and that can be because of that culture that we have in our workplaces. So we can lose staff, we can find that they're not being as productive as maybe they were before. And if they decide to leave, we lose all of that investment that we've made in their development, their skills and their knowledge. And also cost us reputationally as a business. If people leave and feel that they weren't supported and speak to their friends and say, didn't really like that place, I had a lot going on and they didn't care. And also that legal risk. So we touched on that earlier. So I'm not going to go and read all of these slides too, but I just wanted to really reiterate the impact that menopause can have on mental health. So we can feel more anxious, our mood can be low, we can feel frustrated, and those mood swings that we sometimes may exhibit, but we can just generally lose interest, and this can lead to, again, poor sleep, but having those memory issues, and just feeling detached and really not engaged with our workplace. But it's not just those mental impacts, it's those physical impacts. So we can ache more. And if we're maybe sitting a lot, that can certainly impact on us. And we can really need to look at how we can move around a little bit more during the day, especially if we have a sedentary job. You may find that people have more susceptibility to UTIs, to water infections, but it can also be flushed skin, sort of sweating. It can also be, you know, acne, late onset acne, but it can also be weight gain, which can again impact on a person's confidence, and they just may not feel the person that they were. However, that's the negatives, and what I don't want to do is to leave it on that, because there is so much that we can do to actually help with these symptoms. And that's both as a workplace, but also ourselves. So if we're transitioning ourselves, there's lots of things that we can do. So the cornerstones, really: good nutrition, keeping active. What I haven't got on there is sleep, and I think we sometimes ignore the importance of sleep. So, you know, getting your Zs, but good nutrition will really help to raise a mood. There's such a link between our gut health and our brains. Also, it keeps the weight under control and can strengthen your bones. Exercising, again, keeps that mood in a much better place. It can protect us against type 2 diabetes, strengthening our bones, and actually helping with our mental agility. So just a few more things, just a few more practical tips, really. Again, really for a person that's transitioning menopause to think about. So keeping hydrated. It's so easy to forget to keep hydrated. You know, keep a bottle beside you. If you're in a workplace and it's difficult to do that, maybe have a conversation with your manager and see if there is some way that you have access to water when you need it. So keeping that diet healthy, drinking alcohol in moderation. Unfortunately, red wine is not a menopausal person's friend. Neither is Prosecco, I'm really sad to say. We just become more sensitive to the impacts of alcohol, and we don't recover so quickly. So don't give it up, but just reduce it, and maybe take a couple of glasses of water in between your drinks. If you're a smoker, it's pretty much the best thing you can do for your health if you can reduce or give up. I've got some people that can help support you with that, so there's links to that at the end. Things like yoga, mindfulness can all help with mood. Talking therapy, so things like CBT and counselling, can help with mental health issues. See your healthcare professional, really at the top of the list if you've any concerns about your health, and you may wish to consider using something like HRT. Not everyone can use that, but some people find really great benefits from that, but everybody's individual, so not everybody. And getting outdoors, you know, get that natural vitamin D, that feel good vitamin that really does support all of our health. So I'm just sharing with you, actually, this is straight from those BSI standards, creating a workplace that supports somebody transitioning menopause is going to be an inclusive workplace. It's going to be a place where maybe there is some guidance, there could be a policy in place. I've got some signposts to some really great sort of template policies if you want to take a look at them. But it could be looking at job design. It could be looking at how maybe certain roles can be adapted. It could be that environment. It could just simply be being able to open a window, put a fan on a desk, some really, really simple things. But I think most importantly is having that really inclusive environment, that environment where the culture is that you can talk about these things and that people will listen. So that is something that is built, and it comes from the sort of top down and the bottom up, actually asking people what will work for them, remembering everybody is unique and individual. And often these are really small changes. They're not great big things. You don't suddenly need to get an air conditioning system in. You don't need to be changing all sorts of working patterns. They can be really, really small, but actually asking a person directly what would help them is probably really, really key. So I'm not sure if anybody here can actually use the chat, but I just wondered if anyone had any ideas about what would really make a good adjustment in a workplace that's maybe quite simple. As I'm not 100% sure whether you're able to do that, I'm going to just hop on to the next slide, which is just some ideas. So checking out maybe some menopause guidance. So just those templates, maybe discussing those with your staff, looking at how you can develop that culture where menopause can be spoken about openly. And that may be staff meetings. It could be asking somebody like me to come in and have a chat with your workforce, which we'll be happy to do. And really being curious, so encouraging your managers to find out a little bit more about menopause, what those symptoms might be, and really discussing some of those adjustments that they can make. Looking at things like uniforms, if your workforce wears a uniform, maybe looking at breathable fibres so they're a bit cooler, maybe going up a size so that they're a bit looser, having access to fans, sanitary products, which we're going to be coming on to in the next talk, but also maybe looking at flexible working and opportunities for regular breaks during the day, and all of those in conversation with the individual that this would be impacting on. And those conversations, you know, they're not easy. It does take some confidence both ways, really, to have a conversation. And I would always recommend, if you notice that somebody doesn't see themselves, you know, offer them the conversation. You can just start it. I've noticed you've not seen quite yourself recently. Is there anything I could do to support you with that? Would you like to have a conversation? And then make sure that that conversation is held in a private and confidential and sensitive and supportive manner, respectful without judgment. And don't make any assumptions. You know, you're not there to fix or diagnose, but really to provide some really trusted signposting. And I would always recommend that if a person, as I've mentioned before, has any issues with their health, do signpost them to their GP, because that's where their primary source of support comes from, and they can just check out if anything else is going on for that person. And I'd always recommend keeping a confidential record. You know, just keeping that confidentially, it's because you can review that again when you speak to the person, see how they're getting on, but also it just keeps that with your HR records, just really so that you can start to build a picture of what's going on in your organisation. So, and finally, I do want to end on a high, because we've spoken about some of those symptoms. They in themselves can be stigmatising. There's lots a person can do to really help themselves with those symptoms, and also lots that a workplace can do to support them. But actually, many people find that transitioning menopause is like a second spring. It goes back to that granny hypothesis. People find a new purpose in life. They have something called the menopause zest. It gives them the confidence to actually seek new adventures, to concentrate potentially on their careers and continue to develop. So I'm definitely one of those. And actually, it can be a really great part of your life, and it can be a place where you find your purpose and you're able to give to others that have supported you along the way. And so just finally, all of these will be on the presentation. There's lots of signposting to support. This page in particular is really great for employers. Lots here, health coaches. We actually provide health coaches that can come along, give one-to-one support and group support, and lots of brilliant websites, handpicked. I particularly love. There are always webinars and additional information that you can gain from there. And really importantly, talk to each other, because the best support I've had is by talking to friends and just sort of feeling, oh golly, I've got that, a bit less of that, and just really feeling that there is really a movement forward, and it can be that brilliant time in life. So that's the end. So thank you so much. Really now just to ask if anyone's got any questions.
Oh, that was great. We do actually have 2 questions for you that we've had and that have come through to us. So Janice would like to know, how can a company show that they understand this topic and create a safe space for this? So how would they promote it? Or not too much promotion, but do you know what I mean?
I do. Do you know, I think it depends where your starting point is. So if you're already a business that maybe talks a lot around well-being, this could just be another one of those focus groups. We want to talk about menopause. I would really recommend that you get employees involved. They can share their own experiences. If you're at a bit more of a ground zero point in this, you're always welcome to ask someone like me to come in. I'll happily come in and speak to employees and to employers. But it's really developing that culture. So it's starting to talk about it, and it's feeling comfortable about it as well, because it's out there in the press at the moment, and so there is lots of chat. That is a good way maybe of bringing it into the workplace. Have you heard about? But equally it can be, I mean, I've spoken to women that have been the single female on a workforce of 199 men, and they've explained to me how difficult it is because they feel it would be perceived as a weakness. So I think again, it's a very individual, it's what works for your company, but use those resources, get your employees involved, because once they're involved, they have some ownership of this. And it's not just down to employers, we as individuals have a responsibility to take care of our own health and well-being as well, but together we can be brilliant.
And that's actually interesting, because it leads on to Sarah's question, which was, how do we make it more inclusive for everyone to understand it? I think her point was, the male colleagues that are in the office and so forth. So how would we create a safe culture? Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. And that is a real challenge. And I know that just from my own workplace. I've actually run menopause awareness courses, and I've had quite a few men attend those courses. And interestingly, when I've asked them, this is brilliant, you're interested in your workforce, they often say to me, well, actually I am, but my partner's going through this at the moment. Yeah, okay. And I thought this might be useful to them as well. So I think it is around being inclusive, it's around talking about this, but it's about also saying, you may be a husband, a partner, a son, a brother. And I just want to share the best piece of information I had. A lady spoke to me once and said, I was really worried about talking to my manager. He was a 25-year-old young man. He management role. He said, she said, I thought, but I've got to say something, I can't go on like this. She had the most wonderful experience. He said, oh, my mum's going through this at the moment, and do you know what, I really get it. She's having these struggles, but she's doing this. And she said it was a really wonderful and supportive conversation. So again, it was, don't make assumptions, and that goes both ways.
Yeah, that's lovely. And to end on that as well, we did have a comment in the chat. I don't know if you've seen it. There is life after menopause. Yay, I'm 72 and I'm having a ball. We love it.
Yes, absolutely.
That was nice and positive. We did also have a comment that was a bit sad about the prosecco and red wine, but I know,
and it was a hard one for me to let go of. But I have to say, after an initial wobbly, best thing I ever did.
Yeah, all in moderation, I'm sure. But yeah, that was so interesting, Helen. I sort of really picked up on when you were talking about sort of making reasonable adjustments, because that's something I've done in a job before, is helping businesses to make reasonable adjustments for people with complex needs. And when you were breaking down the kind of symptoms and what people are living with in terms of their physical and psychological different symptoms that they might be having, which I also thought was a really good point that you made about it's case by case, isn't it? It's just talking to someone and saying, what do you need? Not just, I'm not sort of assuming that we have to. And I think as soon as you say reasonable adjustments to employers, sometimes they go, because they think, oh no, well, we can't do that. We can't put that in. And that's going to affect our finances, and it's going to change everything, and we can't do it. And it's too much and stuff. But it's like you said, if you just talk to someone, and maybe it's their comfort in the office, or maybe it's that they're not going to be able to concentrate after a certain time, and maybe their hours can be changed up. And really, it's not just going to make that person a lot happier, it's also going to make them much more productive. So it's your same point about ethically, there's a responsibility to really support people, look after people whilst they're working. But equally, economically, for a business, it is also going to make you more productive. So yeah. Perfect. And also wanted to pick up on what you said about sleep, mindfulness, and there are other ways to think creatively about how to support through different things that you're going through. And just to plug that we do have a wellbeing, we have another wellbeing for the workplace session that is concentrated on on MSK, musculoskeletal health, and sleep and mindfulness. So that's going to be really interesting, and maybe we'll lead in from this as well, because like you said, there are physical and psychological sort of aspects of going through the menopause, and if you can support around that as well. So yeah, I think it was really fantastic to see all of the signposting as well. We also have a HR professional who's watching on the call today, who said that they're looking at documents to support their staff and what they can put in. So I think that's going to be so helpful for everyone. So brilliant. So appreciate you so much, Helen, and for putting your sort of personal spin on it as well.
Definitely.
I think, again, like you said, you're changing stigma, changing the game, having the conversation more open, and that really helps as well. So we don't all have to dread it so much. This is the thing. We can all feel a little bit more confident.
Yes, start the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Helen. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure Helen is going to stick around. And like she said, a fabulous offer as well. If anyone wants in their own organisations, or they know of others, please do shout and say that this support is there. And you can have someone as lovely as Helen coming in and talking to you. And it'd be great. So yeah, we really appreciate that. Thank you, Helen.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. So so next up we will ask if Richard and Meg will come on screen for us. Richard and Meg from Grace and Green. Here they are. Hello.
Hi both.
Hi Megan. Hi Richard.
Good morning,
how are you doing? So yeah, if you could just give a bit of a brief kind of introduction to everyone, and yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing from you.
You can go ahead, Rich.
Hi everyone. So I'm Richard. I'm Partnerships Director at Grace and Green. So we're an organic hygiene company, and my key role is to head up our Period Dignity Workplace scheme. So we supply organic period care and educational resources to businesses and organisations to supply for their staff in the bathrooms for free. So we now supply well over 350 businesses, organisations in pretty much any sector you can think of. So private, public, educational. It's really, really far-ranging. We have a lot of clients in traditionally male-dominated sectors, such as construction, which is really promising to see. And yeah, we're looking forward to telling you more about it.
Thanks, Rich. Hi, everyone. I'm Meg. I'm Chief Commercial Officer here at Grace and Green. So I oversee kind of the strategic direction of of the company, and specifically within period dignity, kind of where we're taking it next, and how we continue to improve our offering. But without further ado, we'll tell you a little bit more about what we do. If Laura, potentially, do you have the slides for us? Drum roll.
Okay, don't worry, they're just coming now. We're just loading them.
Thank you. Ideal, thanks. Yeah, so as Rich mentioned, our period dignity is our organisational programme that allows businesses, also public sector such as councils, police forces, to support a menstruation and menopause friendly working environment. Next slide, please.
I think, can you take control, Meg, at the
Oh,
top?
perfect.
Option.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
So why is access to free period care important? So we hear a lot about period poverty, and I think we would automatically think that was linked to kind of abject poverty, but that's not the case for period poverty. The definition of period poverty is actually around not having access to both products and information that allows you to manage your period with dignity. So there's two strands there, one of them being access to products, but the other bigger part, and which we're here to support, is around the information. So that's both product information and basic information on menstrual health that I think all of us feel we should have learned in school, but potentially we've had lacking. So you see a lot of people who are not in abject poverty but can fall into period poverty because they don't have access to the resources and information that they need to manage their period safely. So as part of period dignity, we ensure access to sustainable and safe products, meaning that people don't have to resort to using unsafe alternatives. So things like toilet tissue is often used. We've had pieces of clothing or rags. And this is within professional environments in the UK that you might be surprised to hear. So providing free products ensures that everybody has access to safe and sustainable products. Secondly, helping to create an inclusive work environment. And this is where I'll make my note on inclusive language. So we will reference a lot of studies within our presentation. Typically, studies have been performed on cisgendered women, so women, people who identify, females that identify as women. As Grace and Green as a company, we will include everybody in the conversations around period, but where we're referencing studies in this presentation, it will specifically reference the language of the study, which is often cis women. So 86% of women have started their periods at work without having any products to hand. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call will have been in that position too, leading to stress, embarrassment, also delays to your workday, having to leave in order to get a product or try and find somebody else that has something. So by having free products available, free to access at work, and knowing you've got that comfort that they're there, reduces that stress, stigma, and the taboos around periods. And then finally, through providing a sustainable period product at work, you can be a big part of the switch to removing plastic from the environment. We'll talk about a little bit this in more depth later, but traditional period products, many don't know, are actually chock full of plastic toxins and ingredients that are harmful to the environment. So by switching to a sustainable provider, businesses obviously are ordering way more products than one individual, so can make a huge difference in the switch to sustainable products. So as Grace and Green, through period dignity, our mission comes into three pillars. First is around sustainability and health. We're actually the highest ranking B Corp in the world for organic period care. Rich will talk to you a little bit more about B Corp later, but we scored 146.5, which is an incredible score, and we're really proud of it. So we will tell you a little bit more about that later. Secondly, around accessibility and affordability. So it's about making safe, sustainable period products a basic right, accessible to everyone. We work with a lot of councils at the moment to make sure that products are free to access, especially to young people. We work with a lot of young people to bring products and information to them, and also in public spaces. So obviously leading the way is Scotland. We work with a lot of Scottish councils to help make products free to access to the public as well. And thirdly, we're here to change the conversation. So in order to create period dignity, we know that we need to reduce stigma and shame. So we provide education, we provide lunch and learn sessions, and content across all of our channels as well, to have those realistic conversations about menstruation and menopause that you might not have seen in the traditional industry thus far. So our period dignity scheme, as Rich mentioned earlier, it's our organisational way to solve these problems for businesses, educational institutions and the public sector. Work with over 350 businesses at present, and alongside the products, what we actually do is provide a whole host of member benefits, including discounts to the individual. If they like the products at work, they can get discounts at home, free access to online courses where people can learn about their cycles, symptoms, and actually clinically backed courses that they can then take to their GP should they be concerned about any of their period symptoms, and it's evidence-based and can help improve diagnosis times. I think endometriosis has an average diagnosis time of about 8 years at present. Obviously, people are struggling with that for a way longer than they should be. So by having access to a GP-backed course, it means that they take the data within that seriously, and it can reduce diagnosis time. So it's a really helpful tool that you have access to. You also you get your own discounts. We've got these talks, we've got the scheme, and then we also donate 2% of our revenues to charitable and sustainability causes, and that will link into our B Corp. Over to Rich.
Thanks, Meg. So, first question, do you consider the impact of period products to be the same as single-use plastics? Now, what you may not realise is that there's a huge amount of plastic in period products. So your average shop-bought sanitary pad is actually 90% plastic. So that pack of pads equates to about 4 carrier bags worth of plastic. Obviously, the average menstruating person uses over 11,000 disposable pads and tampons during their lifetime, which equates to a huge amount of plastic. And then you have plastic tampon applicators, which are one of the worst single-use plastic polluters in Europe. Unfortunately, they get used for a matter of seconds, and then a lot of people still flush them down the toilet. So they end up on beaches, along the coastlines, and they're so commonly found now that they're referred to as beach whistles. So yeah, huge amount of plastic in sanitary products. And then, have you ever read the ingredients on the package of a period product? The answer to that will be no. That's because the UK sanitary industry is completely unregulated, generally because historically the government's made so much money in VAT from those products that they're kind of allowed to do what they wanted to do. But alongside that plastic, you have quite a toxic list of ingredients. So I think many people might assume that those products are made from organic cotton. They're not. They tend to be non-organic cotton, which is it's a very water-thirsty crop, but it's actually one of the most heavily treated crops in the world. So 10% of the world's pesticides are used on non-organic cotton. They're then mixed with a lot of synthetic materials like polyester. There can be chlorine bleaching. Artificial fragrances can be added. To give you an idea, in the perfume industry, there's regulations on how much artificial fragrance can be added. It's because some of them are proven to be carcinogenic. There's no such regulation within the sanitary industry. So you end up with a really toxic mix of ingredients, which is terrible for the environment. You know, they take up to 800 years to decompose in landfill, but also potentially harmful for your body. So that's really where we come in. So to give you a little bit of company background, Key for us, we're a female founded and female run business, which I think is really important in our industry. But Fran, who runs the business, she spent just over a decade in the water and sanitation sector. So she was working for international NGOs, specializing in environmental management. So it's very much her passion, and that role allowed her to see the problems that are caused by quote unquote mainstream period products. So Grace and Green was launched. So we are right at the other end of the spectrum. So we only use 100% certified organic materials, and everything is designed to be as ethical and sustainable as possible. So as Meg mentioned, we are the highest scoring B Corp in the world for organic period care. For those of you who aren't familiar with B Corp, it's a globally recognized business certification scheme. It's very difficult to become certified. It's very rigorous. Took us over a year of assessment and evaluation. But you have to show as a business that you put the rights of the environment and your workers above profit. And that's not just your own workers, that's your entire supply chain. So, for example, if you took every business in the UK and scored it on their scoring system, an average score would be about 50. To become certified, you have to score a minimum of 80 points. And as Meg mentioned, we scored 146.5. So it's a really great validation of how we've always worked as an ethical and transparent business. All of our products are also carbon neutral certified. So we are audited by an organization called Climate Partner. And we have carbon offsetting schemes in place for all product manufacture and distribution. As Meg mentioned, we also do a lot of charitable donations and tree planting. So since 2021, we've actually planted over 25,000 trees. So that's a really important part of the business, something we'll continue to do. Key thing around the products is they're not just better for the environment, they're actually much better for your health. So we actually supply our products to the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So they supply our products to their staff, which is a really great endorsement. But there are small differences. For example, if you ever get hold of, say, Lilette's tampon, for one, it's wrapped in tiny bits of plastic, whereas we wrap ours in paper or cornstarch wrapping, which is all compostable. But also that Lilette's tampon is very fragile. So as soon as you touch it, you'll see that fibers come off very easily. What can happen is that those fibers can attach to the vaginal wall. Over time, they build up and harbor bacteria, and that's one of the main causes of toxic shock syndrome. So our tampons actually feature a protective cotton veil. They're much safer, so that prevents fiber shedding. So a key thing to remember in terms of those products. And then kind of the third pillar of the business is our social impact work. So as Meg mentioned, we, as part of our B Corp certification, we have a formal pledge to donate minimum of 2% of annual revenue in the form of product donation. We're just in the process of finalizing our impact report of 2023, and we actually last year donated over 8% of revenue. So product donation is a really key part of what we do. We work with a lot of charities and food banks to help alleviate period poverty, which is unfortunately a large problem within the UK. So I will stop sharing and hand back to Meg.
Thanks, Rich. So hopefully some of the impacts of period products that you might not have even thought about before. Often people are quite shocked when they find out what's in a tampon or what's in a conventional tampon. We're going to move on to some tips and extra support, and we'll have some Q&A at the end, so feel free to pop any questions in the chat. So first, around why understanding menstruation at work is important. So we know that around 50% of the workforce will be female, most of whom will experience menstruation at some point in their life, or menopause. So 75% of menstruating people are caught out by their period at least once a year, often while at work. So that comes into the points I was talking about earlier about being caught short, being without product, the delay to your day, the kind of embarrassment, if you happen to have an accident, then what do you do? Just bringing in those feelings of shame that we just don't need. By having free to access products at work, you just don't need to have this happen. It just takes it all away. 41% of women, so this was a study based on cis women, 41% of women need to hide their periods, and that can include period symptoms as well. So much as Helen was saying earlier about people might not being comfortable to discuss their menopause or perimenopause symptoms, the same happens with periods. So they can have increase in absences, recorded absences, but people not being or not feeling able to say why they're really off work. More than 2/3 of those with periods experience a negative impact at work due to menstruation symptoms. So that could be anything from PMS to those who have menstrual health conditions such as endometriosis, PMDD. So helping to create a workplace environment that has kind of more sensitivity, better understanding, and better resources for people is clearly going to both impact positively your culture at work and people's productivity at work as well. 85% of UK working women feel stress or anxiety managing their period at work. And this paper goes on to say typically it's around the culture of the organisation and the kind of attitudes of the management team, and that's feeding down from leadership. So as well as having product, is really, really important to support that with information, policies, and kind of wider acceptance kind of strategies to get people talking and reduce some of that stress and anxiety. So what can you do? We've got some tips for creating a menstruation friendly workplace, hopefully in 4 nice neat columns. First is around access, so easy access to bathrooms, disposal bins, and period products. So bins is often a forgotten area. So anywhere that you're providing products or anywhere that someone might need to dispose of a product, making sure they have access to a bin. That includes accessible bathrooms and any gender neutral bathrooms that you might have as well. Secondly, it's around providing information about the menstrual cycle. So people of all genders, whether they menstruate or not, can understand what is happening. There's a severe lack of menstrual literacy that in the UK especially, but globally also. So learning how hormones control the periods and how that can impact symptoms at different stages of the menstrual cycle, the range of different symptoms linked to periods, and the impact that can have on employees at work. So we provide little fact sheets information, and we also provide monthly member comms to all of our members, just to reinforce this, like little tips every month, so that there's kind of bite-sized gradual learning along the way. Thirdly, it's around creating awareness, so raising awareness of period-related issues at work, encouraging conversations so that team members know that they can ask support if they need it. And policies can be really helpful for this, because if you have a menstrual leave policy or a menstruation policy, first of all, it educates your employees as to what they can ask for, what is there, what you're doing. It shows that you've taken the issue seriously, and then for any managers, it gives them very clear benchmarks and guidance around what to do, and obviously supporting that with training as well. And then finally, it's around promoting acceptance. So dispelling any taboos by making sure your whole team knows how issues with periods can affect people at work. So especially managers who are people managing, who might have to have conversations around absence, and just making sure that managers are confident about having sensitive conversations with their staff, showing empathy and understanding. And this is for people of all genders to understand. Obviously, there will be people of all genders in management positions, so everybody should be able to have a basic conversation and a basic understanding about what people might be experiencing at work. I often think it's funny that we all very easily learn 12 months of a calendar year, but how many people could name the 4 stages of a menstrual cycle? Onto the menopause now. I won't duplicate too much of what Helen said earlier, but as to why this is important within a workplace setting, Helen mentioned women over 50 are the fastest growing group in the workflow and in the workforce demographics. 4.5 million women aged 50 to 64 are currently in employment, so huge portion of the population. Women in this age group are often highly skilled and experienced. They're often a good way through their careers journeys, so typically at the peak of their careers and are role models for younger workers. So keeping these people within the workforce is really important for both organisational development and bringing on younger team members as well as for them as individuals. So it benefits everybody to provide support for those experiencing menopause. 4 out of 5 females will experience some menopause symptoms. However, many of these women feel forced to leave work because of their menopause symptoms, and I'd suggest that that's because the organisation, that's not a problem with the individual, and in most cases it is that the organisational structures are not there to support people experiencing menopause. Helen did talk through the kind of 3 stages of menopause from perimenopause through to menopause and postmenopause, and hopefully by postmenopause that's out the other side and starting to have symptoms reduced. So what can you do as employers to support, educate and empower staff? So first of all, it's around creating policies, guidelines, benchmarks, so people know where they stand. As employers now legally, you have to support reasonable adjustments for anyone experiencing symptoms, so reviewing your policies, but that can be things like having a flexible uniform policy. If you do have uniforms within work, making sure that people can wear loose fitting clothes or whatever's comfortable for them, if they're feeling hot, however they're feeling. Flexible working so that they can work around their symptoms. So if people are feeling different things at different times of the day, so if people are having trouble sleeping and need to start work later, where possible, especially in an office environment, if you've got the option for flexible working, flexi time, that can be really helpful. And making sure that you have a clear policy around absence, both for menstruation and menopause. Does it count as sickness? Is it something else? Just making sure people are clear with what they can ask for. Secondly, it's around educating individuals and managers around menopause symptoms. So those are both the physical symptoms as well as psychological and cognitive symptoms. So I think we hear stories of kind of like a brain fog being a cognitive symptom, but also the physical symptoms and psychological symptoms such as stress and anxiety. So especially within perimenopause, one of the first symptoms that people can experience in perimenopause is an increase in anxiety as your estrogen receptors, your estrogen levels are kind of yo-yoing at that point and can increase anxiety levels. So just thinking about the wide range of symptoms, and as Helen says, not assuming anything, but making sure people are aware that these can be symptoms of perimenopause, menopause. Thirdly, it's around relating to your employees, listening to their experiences at work. So many employers will have working groups, so like a women's network, for example, could be a good forum to take this to. Just listening to people's experiences and how it's impacting them within your workplace. There could be some really easy fixes if you listen to your people around what you can be doing there. And finally, it's around creating an physical environment that's menopause friendly as well. So that might be access to fans, ventilation, being able to open a window, just having cold drinking water, maybe ice in summer, and well-equipped toilet facilities with access to free period products, especially if people are in perimenopause. They might have more irregular periods, so it might be more difficult for them to track, and they might be more likely to be caught short at work. So having access to free period products that they can just take if they need it also will support those experiencing perimenopause. We do have a training provider that we work with to provide more specific one-on-one clinics, and can go into organisations to work with individuals or organisations, training managers, etc. So if you're interested in anything like that, we can follow up after the event. Finally, supporting trans and non-binary menstruators, so those that might not identify as women. So they will, if they've been born female, assigned female at birth, often they will still experience a menstrual cycle or might do. So just not to assume, as Helen said earlier. So periods can be a source of stress for everybody, but they can bring specific challenges for those who don't identify as female. So including trans men and non-binary people. So combined with the lack of awareness around kind of facilities, it can leave lots of people that are gender non-conforming without access to period items, disposal bins, or kind of safe bathrooms environments for them. So some considerations for supporting trans and non-binary colleagues with periods is to provide period products and disposal bins in gender neutral locations if you can, or in all bathrooms. Disposal bins also are actually really handy if for male colleagues, so cis male colleagues, especially if they're experiencing incontinence, which is a different topic for today, but is widely common and also stigmatized. So disposal bins in places where people might need to dispose of things is core basic, but often overlooked. Secondly, it's around considering product mix when you are providing period products. So some people might be happier using a pad or a product that sits outside of the body rather than a tampon or a cup that sits inside of the body, if potentially they're experiencing any gender dysphoria. Not everybody does and not everybody will, but it's good to cater for a wide range of people and their preferences. Thirdly, we'll be considering the language you use. So trying to use gender neutral terms when describing period and period products. So generally, some common phrases that you can use is women and people with periods, so inclusive to kind of people who identify as women, but also including those who don't identify that way within the sentence, so women and people with periods. You can just use menstruators, people with periods. So just considering the language and making an effort to be inclusive. It's very basic, it's very easy, and it doesn't harm anyone to include everybody. And lastly, just being respectful of everybody's different experiences of their period. So no matter their gender. So, for example, you could have two cisgendered women will experience their periods completely differently. I have a colleague who has PMDD, so premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and the way that she experiences her cycle is completely different from mine, because I don't have a menstrual health condition, luckily, and so it's everybody's experience is different no matter your gender. So just being respectful of that and willing to listen and make accommodations. And that's it for our presentation. Hopefully that opened your eyes a little bit to what's in period products, and why choosing an organic sustainable period product is both good for your body but also good for the planet, and then some considerations for employers to support different groups within your workforce and why that's important. For all of that, and if you're interested, our period dignity scheme is open for organisations, workplaces, councils. So we can support you with all of the things we've covered today, and you can get in touch. But back to the questions, if anybody has any.
Oh, that was amazing. Thank you. You covered quite a lot then, answered many of the questions that I had myself really there. But we do have one question from Susan. And Susan would like to know, period dignity, how does that actually affect the, what is the impact on mental health within that?
So if you think around kind of at work specifically, so period dignity at work, without that, there can be levels of kind of stress, anxiety, especially if someone has a menstrual health condition, can be more likely to drop out of the workforce. And then kind of it's a domino effect. So, and then if you potentially are experiencing anxiety, that gets worse if you're dropping out of the workforce. They're kind of factors that interlink. So I think core, it's kind of stress and anxiety for the majority of people, but for those with menstrual health conditions, it can lead into far kind of deeper areas. So often those who have PMDD, as I mentioned earlier, will be misdiagnosed as potentially having a personality disorder. So will be misdiagnosed as having a mental health condition rather than their menstrual health condition being properly diagnosed. So having a good understanding of menstruation, menstrual health conditions, like symptoms of periods, can actually be really helpful for those and equipping them to not be gaslit in a way later down the line by medical professions.
Just love how as women we went, yeah.
So how for the businesses here, where do you have any like links or anything that you could share where they can go and have a look, and they can look for kind of like, you know, what are the top symptoms, how to approach this? Does that make sense? Or, you know, help that they can refer in, because I know we have some HR people on, that would be really good for them to kind of build their little resource bank within that.
Absolutely, I'll let Rich do the follow-up.
Yeah, that's right. And we we were saying as well when Meg and Rich came on firstly that we actually have Grace and Green products here. And I think that was after hearing you guys speak before at our business festival, and I remember that, and what really stuck with me from that, and each time that I listen to anyone from your organization speak, is just how important it is. What also shocked me is how little I knew or assumed that I knew. And say even like with the quality of the products, also the beach whistle thing has just completely stuck in my head forever. And now I keep saying this to people, regardless of whether they want to hear it. Have you heard what they call them? Beach whistles? But the quality of the products and how that literally can have an impact on our health, and something like toxic shock syndrome, that not being biological, but it can be caused by the products that you're using, I just found absolutely like heartbreaking, honestly. And the fact that I didn't know that, I just felt like I was missing something that could ultimately be very, very dangerous for me and the people around me. And also because I feel up to this point, now I'm learning, but up to this point I've always seen buying period products as something that I kind of resent doing. It's not something I want, you know, like when it had a luxury tax on it or something. It's the same thing as buying petrol. I don't want it, it doesn't it's not fun, but I need it. So I think to just change my mindset and think this is something that I need, is something that is going to affect my body and my well-being, then I think once you start changing your mindset like that, it's a lot different. And I think then that bigger picture of how we actually treat how important this is as a physical thing that is happening to half of the population, half of the workforce. So I think those are takeaways.
I think what you said there, Laura, is really important in thinking about supplying products in the workplace. You know, you have to remember that period products, they're not a luxury item, they're a boring necessity item. As a guy, it's really easy to take that for granted, but I would never expect to go into the workplace to have to bring my own toilet roll. So it's exactly the same, you know, half your workforce need to use period products. So you need to be considering them in the same vein as the toilet roll and the soap. You know, they should be there for free. You shouldn't have to go to some special cupboard. You shouldn't have to ask your friend, leave the office to get the product.
Get up the sleeve.
Yeah, exactly. So just to go back quickly to the previous question, anybody that wants any further information, we can share obviously our presentation following the meeting. They can go to perioddignity.com, which is our dedicated workplace website. Also, anybody that has any connection to the educational sector, we created a whole range of educational resource which we made open source. So it's all there to be downloaded for free, primary, secondary educational resource. So there's a real wealth of information on the Period Dignity website.
Okay, and again, maybe for we've got our HR professionals that are in the session as well that have said about utilising this kind of thing for the documents, the resources that they have that are supporting their sometimes huge organisations and even smaller. So yeah, that's fantastic and so helpful. Thank you so much, Meg. Thank you, Richard, so much. And yes, thank you to all of our speakers. And just to finish off our session today, we can see from the chat and the engagement that me and Letitia have been receiving throughout, is that's been really, really helpful, all of the information that we've had today, and what a subject it is. I think really it's like Helen mentioned earlier, we're starting to hear this subject, but really we're only really scratching the surface with really embedding it into what we're doing daily, and there's a lot of support that still needs to be input for people. Our next sessions in our Wellbeing for the Workplace series will be happening nice and easy to remember because they're the next following Tuesdays. So we've got next Tuesday just after Easter, just after the Easter break, we on the 2nd of April, same time, we have our financial wellbeing sessions. That'd be good if you spend too much on over Easter
eggs.
You might need the chocolate if you're suffering from your period or menopause. And then the week after, we have a session on musculoskeletal health and mindfulness, and then the week after that, Tuesday the 16th, we have our last session in the series, which again is quite a heavy subject. It's self-harm and suicide, but again something that we feel is really, really important, and we do hear it does affects workplaces in a whole different way than affects other places and people. So again, why we're bringing that to the forefront and trying to share some knowledge, have amazing speakers, and also get some resource packs to support you guys, the business community, which is what we're here to do. So we hope that was helpful today. Anything else to add, Letitia?
No, I hope you enjoyed that, and please leave your comments underneath. Any questions that you do have, as both of the speakers have said, they're happy. They've sent you links to kind of go out and have a look at those resources. Anything you need from us as well, you can email us and we're happy to send those out to you. But it's great that we're having these conversations, especially in the workplace. It's really important. And all we've got to do is just keep having these conversations to make the change happen. So thank you again to all of our speakers. Hope you enjoyed this. And yes, see you at the next one. See you next Tuesday.
See you then.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.